Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Phil Switch Podcast. My name is Phil Carute, and I am joined by my fearless co-host, Brock Tamarino. The Phil Switch Podcast is brought to you by Sal's Tire Caps. Sal's Tire Caps. Fine motor skills required. So, Brock, another week, another day, another hour, another second, another minute. I just finished watching this first season of, the Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power? I don't really get it, Brock.
I've only seen like bits and pieces of that, but I gotta admit, I lost a little bit of interest a little bit of the way through. I mean, I knew where they were going, but I guess I didn't care where they were going, so I stopped watching it.
Yeah, you made a good decision. I actually just went ahead and kept torturing myself at the urgency of my family. Two of my family members in particular wanted to keep watching it. One of my family members checked out way early, which is what I should have done. But I kept going. It got to a point, Brock, where at one point me and my daughter were talking while the show was playing. Actually, in the last episode, the season finale, and my wife was intently watching. My daughter and I were talking about something for, 2 or 3 minutes. And when I turned to my wife after my daughter and I got done talking, I said, "So what were they talking about?" My wife, who had been watching it intently, also had no idea. She had just as much of a clue what the characters were talking about as my daughter and I, who had been paying no attention to the show. So it really holds people's attention, is what I'm saying, Brock. And I really don't. I struggle with the characters in that TV show as well. Some of them I think are actual characters that we saw in the Lord of the Rings, which I guess when we saw them in the Lord of the Rings was later in the storyline. But two characters I have particular issue with are the main two characters, I guess, which is Elrond, I don't know, and Galadriel. But everybody, or half the people in the show, pronounce it like
Galadriel,
as though it's supposed to be like some type of accents or something in her name. Anyway, the cool guy from the bad guy from The Matrix played the original Elrond. That's definitely not who plays it, the TV series, nor does he really look like that guy. And then I believe Cate Blanchett played
Galadriel.
And also, the actress playing that doesn't look like her, which is fine. I mean, I guess I'm not really too hung up on that. It doesn't matter, but I don't know. It just doesn't do anything for me. And then now Star Wars. Sorry, Brock. I'm kind of taking all the time here.
No, that's okay. You know, you're obviously more passionate about this than I am. You know, like I said, I don't care.
I respect that. I wish I didn't, but I was born and raised a nerd, or a geek, or a dork, or whatever. Maybe all three. So I'm kind of tied to it in somewhat. Now, I'm not like a major nerd, so I don't know all the ins and outs. I haven't read like the books and learned all the languages, and I don't have like memorabilia. I don't go to like Comic-Con things and talk to other huge nerds about things like that and lose my mind because the tree looks slightly different than what it was described as in the book. But I am tied to it somewhat. Some of that stuff interests me, like, as I guess to the degree of movies. The movies interest me. And so just didn't really care about the characters. And then this like whole Star Wars thing they're trying to do. I tried to like play along when they did these like, I guess like the post movies. What was it called? Force Rises or something like that. I don't know. I didn't remember the names of it. And now they have all these like spin-off series And so I watched The Mandalorian, which was kind of interesting, kind of cool. The things that came after weren't. And then they have this new series, I guess. And the only reason I know about it is because one of my family members asked me if I wanted to watch it, and I said absolutely not. Andor, which apparently follows the character from Rogue One, which was actually kind of a neat idea, Rogue One. But it follows this character, Cassian Andor. And apparently, I just did a little bit of reading. I did actually do some research for this episode, Brock, so I hope you're proud of me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, any effort's better than no effort. So, yeah, I'm proud of you. Sure.
Yeah, so anyway, I did a little bit of research, and apparently this is set like 5 years before the events in Rogue One. Again, I struggle to care about what happened with this character 5 years before he did anything remarkable. So, I don't know. Anyway, Brock, it sounds all depressing. I'm sitting here talking about these shows that have been fairly unimpressive, and good hats off to the people that have written these shows and the crew that gets to hang out and get paid probably good money for producing something as reliable as a meteorologist would produce, which frankly isn't that much. So anyway, enough of me. Maybe I'm in a bad place, a dark place. I thought we would maybe take a call or two, see what they think about this. I tried to get Tobias, big Comic-Con geek. Apparently he was at some party. They're going to try to point out all the errors. They're doing like some type of, I don't know, some type of thing where they're staying up several days and watching the whole Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power, and they're going to try to point out all the errors in it. So I told Tobias, good luck with that. Have fun. He said it'll be a real blast. He said that one of his friends already has a couple surprises that maybe nobody else has caught on to. Tobias assured me that this buddy had like 20 things he was going to point out by the third episode, and Tobias said little does he know he already had 50 that he was going to point out by the second episode. And then Tobias and I got into a conversation about virginity, and Tobias asked me what that meant and the actual word. And I just told Tobias not to worry about it and to enjoy his party. And he seemed happy with that. So we're just going to take another caller or two, maybe, depending on how long this caller has to talk about this. In regards to this new Lord of the Rings series and this new Star Wars series, Andor, and maybe apparently there's more stuff coming up from Star Wars. So outside of seeing Darth Vader fight people or Jedis just fight with their lightsabers, I'm kind of out. I'm tapped out on Star Wars. So anyway, first caller, Stan, thank you for joining us. Sorry about the maybe the down talk, the depression that maybe you can hear in my voice from all these once cool things that they're slowly attempting to ruin or quickly attempting to ruin. Stan, you are on the Phil Switch. What are your thoughts on the new Lord of the Rings TV series, Lord of the Rings, Power of the Rings, or the Rings of Power, whatever, and this new Star Wars series, Andor, based around a character that nobody cared about until Rogue One came out, and apparently now everyone wants to know what happened before Rogue One came out with him. Stan, you're on the Phil Switch.
All right, so I'll tell you right now. See, I'm an old timer, as you guys know from talking to me, and so the Lord of the Rings. Now, I went and saw those movies. I saw them in the theater, which was real exciting. I mean, those are the types of movies that when people say you got to see it in a theater, now they are not joking. You got to see those movies in a theater. It's so cinematic, I want to say. I think that's the word. Anyway, I went to see those in a theater. And when I saw the movies, I thought, well, those are real nice. There's a lot of action. They had these things. They had some ogres in them that that were running around chasing all the good guys?
Well, actually, Stan, sorry to interrupt you. They're actually called orcs. I did see those movies. They're actually called orcs.
So, orcs, okay? So they had these orcs running all around chasing the good guys. And the good guys, now they were real good. They had this guy they had an elf, I think, and he was like the Robin Hood of the group. He had this bow and arrow, and he would shoot them real fast, and he was real precise. And that was real cool. And then they had this other guy that just appeared to be a regular human guy, and he had a sword, and he sweated a whole bunch. I remember that. But they also said he was the leader, which I thought was kind of odd because, see, the elf was like immortal, and I don't want to get too nerdy here. I mean, I'm kind of a geek myself. I liked some of them Star Wars movies when they first came out, and I liked some of those fantasy movies. I liked, what is that other movie there? I'm trying to think now. You got Star Wars, got Star Trek, of course. What else you got now? When I was watching movies, I liked that Star Wars. And, I even liked Spaceballs. And that was what they call parody of Star Wars. But I even liked Spaceballs. And I liked some of the science fiction, the comedic science fiction they threw behind Spaceballs. I like that. Anyway, so this regular human with a sword is supposed to be the leader. And that's okay. Well, I guess you got to find a leader. But I'm thinking to myself, well, this human seems like he'd be real easy to take out because he didn't do a whole bunch outside to swing a sword around, see? And the elf, like I said, he's kind of an immortal guy from what I understood, which I didn't really grasp all that, but I guess they don't die, they can be killed, because we saw some dead ones in a little creek they were trying to go across, but they don't die, so you can kill them, but if left to their own devices, they'll just keep on living. So I thought, well, maybe the elf would be better because, he's immortal, so he can really carry on some kind of legacy. But meanwhile, they also have this little, was it a troll? Something like that? They have this troll, and he had this real big beard, and he had a big axe. And I don't remember if he is immortal. I don't think he was. I think the trolls just go on, and when they die, they die. And then they had this wizard friend. His name was Gandalf. I remember that because I thought that was a real silly name. And I remember I was watching these movies in the theater with my friend Clyde. Now, Clyde, he's a real jokester. And I remember he said, "Oh, Gandalf, it reminds me of golf. And it reminds me of a friend Dan who likes golf. So Dan Golf is a good way to remember that is Gandalf because then you're just going to switch Dan Golf. You're going to switch that D and them G's and then it's Gandalf." And that's how we remembered that. And I thought because the wizard seems to live forever because, what do they call that? Spoiler alarm? Spoiler alarm here. If you haven't seen the movies, you might want to plug your ears or pause the podcast. Maybe take a few steps forward here. But what happens is at some point in this movie, Gandalf gets in a fight with this demon. And this demon's chasing him and his little friends. Oh, they also have these things called, what are those things called? Not goblet. Gobblers. They have these things called gobblers. And,
so the whole group that's with Gandalf is the, what they call him, the Ranger, which is the, I can't think of his name, but that's a human with the sword. The dwarf, I think, is it dwarf or trolls?
I don't know. Either one. They're the same, aren't they?
Yeah, okay. Sure, yeah, they're the same. So the dwarf or troll with the beard and the axe, and you have the elf with the ears and the arrows. And I think you're thinking of hobbits, not gobblers, hoblets, or hobbits.
No, you're right. I'm thinking of hoblets. So they have these hoblets there with them. Well,
never mind.
What's that?
Nothing. You're fine.
So they have these hoblets, and they're all. I think he's got 3-4 hoblets with him because one of them, what's his name? It's like Fredo or Fringo. Anyway, this one hoblet, he he's got a couple friends, and they're with him. So you got the wizard, you got that, what'd you say, ranger fella, you got the troll, you got the elf, and you got this wizard. And anyway, they're running from this demon. Sorry, got off track. Trying to keep all this stuff together. They're running from this demon, and the wizard tells them, "You go on ahead now. I'm going to take care of this guy. You guys run. You got your whole thing you got to do. You got your lives ahead of you. I'm going to stand here. I'm going to take care of this demon. It's causing all kinds of problems." So he turns around and he tells this demon, "You ain't go get my friends." He says something like that. And I remember Clyde nudged me in the ribs and he said, "This wizard's about to die. Stan, do you realize that?" And I said, "Oh, Clyde." And I remember there's a lady and her kids and her husband sitting in front of us, and they turned around and they gave us a big old look and they said, "Shh." They said, "We ain't seen this yet." And Clyde said, "Well, neither, I haven't seen it either, but I know it's going to happen because that demon's huge and that wizard looks like a freaking ant compared to it. So who do you think's going to win?" And the dad turned around and he said, "Sir, can you be quiet? My kids are trying to watch." And right then that demon beat that wizard. And now I saw it, and Clyde was peeking up, but that mom or dad didn't see it. They missed that whole thing because they were arguing with Clyde. And their kids saw it, and they were like, "What's going on?" And Clyde's like, "Hey, can you be quiet? We're trying to watch a movie. You guys are talking. You should have been paying attention." Oh, that caused a real hoot in the movie theater for a couple minutes. But anyway, the demon takes over Gandalf, takes over Gandalf, and we don't know what happened. We just see Gandalf fall into this Seine, and the demon gets him, and the hobblers and the other people are all running, and they finally get to safety. Well, then what happens, and this is why I thought maybe the elf or the wizard should be the leader, is the wizard, actually, they show what happened in a later movie or something. I forget if it was a later movie or if it was later in this in the current movie we were watching. But anyway, the wizard, they show what happened to him, and he fights this demon, and he really takes him to task. Anyway, long story short, the wizard ends up actually coming back. And apparently he had like a gray robe, but then when he came back, he had a white robe. So instead of the gray wizard, they were calling him the white wizard. And I was confused for a couple minutes. And I told Clyde, I said, "Wait, that don't make no sense." And Clyde said, "Stan, don't overthink it. It's just a stupid movie." And I said, "Well, that's a good point." And so he died wearing gray. He came back wearing white, and that's just all there is to it. And so I thought to myself, well, heck now, that elf there, he ain't going to die left to his own devices and just, if he's just sitting here hanging out all day, he ain't never going to die unless you kill him. And the wizard, apparently you can even kill him, and he's going to come right back. You can even kill him with a demon, and he's going to come right on back. He ain't going to be no problems at all. He's going to come right back and be stronger than ever. Because what I understood, he was stronger than ever when he came back in his white robe. But the sticking point for me was they're really wanting this just regular guy to be the leader. He's really got to be the guy that's calling the shots and saying, "Hey, I don't like this, and maybe we ought to rethink this." And I'm thinking to myself, well, that just don't make a lot of sense, because it seems, now it could be crazy, but it seems to me like he just ain't got a whole lot of power to him. You know what I'm saying? And then that dwarf, of course, he go die either way, whether somebody kills him or he just gets old and dies. And the same with this regular ranger's human guy. He just go die. There ain't going to be nothing to it. Even if he can go jogging every day, he can avoid alcohol, he can avoid cigarettes, he can make sure he puts on suntan lotion, eats plenty of carrots, gets all of his fruit, drinks plenty of water, and he's going to die. Now, that's the thing that see with this elf. The elf, he ain't going to just die, right? He ain't just going to die off. He could eat chocolate cake his whole life. He could eat as much ice cream as he wants. Now, the one thing I don't know is, because I didn't see it, I don't know if the elves ever get heavyweight. Now, I know the troll thing, I know that they appear to be a little bit on the obese side. They probably need a couple seats on the airplane, I imagine. But the elf, I was wondering, I thought to myself, if the elf can't die, right, if he is left to his own devices, he's just going to live on and live on, then what I'm wondering to myself is, does he also have a real good metabolism? So follow me here. You guys following me?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm following you, Stan. Go right ahead.
Okay, so what I'm wondering is if he's got a real good metabolism, if that ain't what's keeping them elves alive so long. So I'm wondering myself, I said, Clyde, think of this. And the movie hadn't started yet. This was after, I think, maybe the first movie. We were waiting at theater for a second one when it came out. And I said, think of this. I said, if that elf there, if he ain't gonna die unless you kill him, then I just wonder, like, could he eat all the ice cream he wants, all the cake he wants, all the cookies he wants? Could he drink as much pop as he wants? Could he be a chain smoker? Could he, maybe, delve into the liquor cabinet there a little bit more than maybe one should? And if he does all that, she gonna be okay. And Clyde said, well, I don't know. How am I supposed to know that? This is a work of fiction, he said. And I was like, well, I'm just asking. I know it's a work of fiction, but I'm trying to think practical. If I had somebody I wanted to be a leader, okay, now you got the wizard, and apparently he can do whatever he wants, so he ain't gonna die. He got almost killed by a demon. Demon wrapped his tail or whip or something around his leg and pulled him down. And that I tell you right now, when I saw that whip had to be pretty hot, because it looked like the demon was on fire, like he was lava, or maybe he was like coals or something like that. And he threw that whip around that Gandalf wizard's. He threw it right around his leg and he yanked him down. I remember when we would act up sometimes, my dad would go out to the yard, grab a switch off a tree, and he'd yank that switch off that tree. And as soon as I saw that wizard yank that demon yank that wizard down, I thought to myself, oh, he's gonna be in for real bruising. My dad used to say, when me and my siblings acted up, he'd say, oh, you're cruising for bruising, he'd say. And that's when we knew that we better get back in line, because once my daddy said, oh, you're cruising for bruising, I tell you right now, you better watch your P's and your Q's. You got to watch both of them, because if my dad said you're cruising for bruising, and then you just let your P's and Q's go scattered all over the place, well, I tell you one thing, you get that bruising. And it was well earned, I tell you right now. It's not like this generation now that if you tell them they're going to get in trouble, they start crying or saying that you can't do that to them. If Daddy said you're going cruising for a bruising and you kept cruising, that bruising going to come right along. That's what's going to happen. But anyway, when he yanked that wizard down, I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I thought just like I said, I thought he's cruising for a bruising. And sure enough, they get down there and they're fighting, and I don't remember the details of the fight. I never really prided myself on being much of a fight choreographer, but they were swinging that, which made me wonder who choreographed that fight, because I wonder who has practical experience to choreograph a fight where there's a demon with a fire whip, and then there's this wizard who pretty much looks like an ant compared to this demon thing. But I don't know who choreographed that, but I suppose if there was awards out there, they'd probably get an award for doing a real good job. And so, anyway, that's my big thing with that. I just don't think maybe they picked the right leader. I think maybe more consideration should have gone into it. Maybe there should have been some kind of vote, something like that. Because if I were the elf, I'd be like, well, hey, guy with the sword, I see you got a sword and you sweat a lot and you got a beard, and that's good. I don't got a beard. Well, the elf didn't have a beard, so he'd say, I don't got a beard. And, the guy would say, well, I got long hair. And the elf would say, well, I got longer hair, actually. And then the real sticking point for that elf, though, would be like, oh, hey, by the way, just out of curiosity, what's your lifespan? And then there'd be silence. A hush would go over the crowd. And that human would have to come back and say, well, are you talking about if I'm getting in fights or if I'm just off doing my own thing, just relaxing, just chilling out? And the elf would say, yeah, just if you don't have to do anything ever in your life, you're just sitting here messing about and going about your way, and you're eating your Wheaties, and you're taking your 2-mile jog a couple times a week, and you're doing your yoga, and you're doing your resistance training, and you ride your bike down the block and back. How long you gonna live? And that regular guy with the sword have to say, well, the average is about 75 and a half. And the elf would say, oh, well, do you want to ask me my expected life expectancy? And of course the guy would say, well, not really, kind of knowing where the elf's going. And the elf would say, well, are you sure? Because I sure would like to share it with you. And that guy in front of everybody, the troll and the hobblers and the wizard, would say, well, I don't know, we got to get into all that, I suppose. And the elf would kind of push him a little bit, I suppose. He'd say, well, maybe I'll just tell you anyway. And that the guy with the sword that's going to die in about 75 and a half years would say something like, oh, well, I guess you go do what you go do. And the elf would say, yeah, my life expectancy is forever. And that hush would go right across that crowd again. And then the wizard, depending on if he wanted the power or not, the wizard seemed kind of humble. But if he wanted that power or not, he might say, oh, that's interesting, because I'm thinking the guy with the sword over there, he's got about 75 and a half years, and then you go live forever. Now, that's just assuming somebody don't kill you. And they'll say, what do you mean by that? And he says, well, I mean, do you live forever if you get killed? And the elf would say, well, I don't plan on getting killed because I can shoot about 20 arrows in about 10 seconds. And it was like, oh, cool. But what I was wondering, though, is if somebody killed you, would you still be alive? And the elf would probably say, well, I don't know. I don't know. I've thought about it because I've become so proficient in my skills, and really I've just taken my forever life expectancy for granted. And the wizard would say, well, that's kind of my point. So let me ask you again, in case you didn't hear me so well, or in case you forgot. If somebody were to kill you, would you live forever? And the elf, after kicking a couple rocks around and looking around at his friends to see who might still be supportive of him, might say something to the effect of, well, I don't reckon, I reckon if somebody killed me, I don't reckon I'd still be alive. My life expectancy would be whatever age I was. But, of course the elf could also say, but, that's not bad. I'm already 300 years old or whatever. So I guess all good things must come to an end. The wizard would say, well, that's kind of my point. And a hush would go over the crowd, and the wizard would say, you see, there's an interesting fact about me, as a matter of fact, and why maybe I should be leader. And I suppose that fact, if you're listening or paying attention, of course, that fact would be that I actually got killed by this fire demon. Yeah. So that happened, and then what happened after that was then I came back, and not only did I come back, actually I came back better than ever, and somebody had even cleaned up and bleached my robes to make them look even more shinier and sparklier. And the elf would kind of feel foolish, but he's lived 300 years or so. But that guy that only has a life expectancy of 75 and a half years, now that guy just feels dumb. He feels real dumb that he was going to lead all these people, two people who are probably way older than him. So it's kind of like when you get a little bit older and you get a new job, and that teenage kid showing you how to do your job and how to use a computer, stuff like that. And you're kind of like, well, it's nice. It's cool to have a boss that's 30 years younger than me, but at the same time, maybe I ought to learn cursive, so there's that. But I guess that's my thing on the Lord of the Rings. Did you guys want me to talk about Star Wars as well then?
Actually, Stan, that was very interesting, but I tell you what, maybe we'll talk about Star Wars another time, and you can come back for that, because you had a very long explanation and viewpoint about the Lord of the Rings, which I really appreciate, and that was just about leadership. So it'd be interesting to hear maybe some other stuff you have to say about Lord of the Rings at some point.
Oh yeah, no, I can get into that. I got a couple more theories about that.
Well, the thing is, we're kind of at the end of our time here, Stan. So we're going to let you go, And if we bring Star Wars or Lord of the Rings back onto the show, we'll make sure to have you on to cover another topic with Lord of the Rings or just Star Wars or maybe leadership in Star Wars.
Oh, I'm not like I like Star Wars, and I got a whole host of feelings I got about their leadership structure. I really do.
Yeah, that would be great to hear sometime, Stan. But like Phil said, we're coming to the end of our show here. We try not to, drag the show out too long. So Stan, we really appreciate you coming on the Phil Switch, and we look forward to having you on again. Thank you very much, Stan.
All right, well, thank you guys. I really appreciate it. And yeah, anytime you guys want me to come back on, just give me a ring, or I'll give you guys a ring. I'm always listening, so I'll just see what topic's up, and I'll call in if it suits my fancy.
All right, cool. Thank you, Stan. Thank you, Stan, for joining the Phil Switch today, giving us some of your insight, your feelings on Lord of the Rings of Power. So thank you for that, Stan. And as always, thank you all for listening to the Phil Switch podcast. Don't forget to check out my other podcast, The First and 15th, which I co-host with Kaplowitz Media over at kaplowitz.xyz. Go check that out. Also, if you would like to contact us here at the Phil Switch, you can do that by emailing us at thephilswitch@gmail.com. Again, that's thephilswitch@gmail.com. Until next time, guys, we wish you all a great week, and we'll talk to you soon here at the Phil Switch.